I woke up to the smell of cinnamon and pine, my stomach buzzing with excitement. Christmas morning meant laughter, presents, and for once, I thought I'd feel like I belonged. "Mom, Dad, I'm up," I shouted, running down the stairs, my heart racing. "Good morning, champ," my father mumbled from the kitchen, barely looking up from his coffee. He never cared much for the holidays, and that sting of indifference always hit harder than I expected. "Jason, don't mess with the decorations this year," my stepmother called. "I don't want another disaster." I smiled, thinking maybe this Christmas could be different. But Jason's smirk told me otherwise. "Relax, little brother. I won't ruin your perfect morning," he said, voice dripping with sarcasm. I laughed, shaking my head. "Yeah, right. You're always ruining something." He stepped closer, his grin widening. "Remember last week? When you told me your little crush secret? I thought everyone should know." "What?" My stomach dropped. I froze. "Jason, you promised." I know, but I figured, Christmas is the perfect time for surprises." He laughed loud and cruel. "Everyone, guess what our little brother is hiding?" I turned, eyes wide, to see the family's faces. My stepmother was stifling a smirk, my father didn't even glance up. My cheeks burned as Jason rattled off the details I had trusted him with, laughing all the while. I felt the floor vanish beneath me. "Why would you, how could you?" my voice cracked. Jason shrugged, pretending innocence. "I didn't do anything wrong. Just thought everyone should know the truth." "You're a jerk," I spat, my hands trembling. "A complete jerk." "Oh, come on," he said, rolling his eyes. "Don't be so dramatic. It's Christmas. Everyone loves a little fun." I looked at my stepmother. "Aren't you going to say something?" "He's humiliating me." She leaned back, sipping her tea, expression calm, almost approving. "He's just being honest, dear. Maybe you should be more careful about what you share with people." "Mom?" I stopped. That wasn't my mother. It was someone I didn't recognize, cold and unsympathetic. "Sit down, Jason. Breakfast is ready." Her voice carried that finality, that dismissal that cut deeper than any words Jason had thrown at me. I felt tears prick my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "I'll go outside," I muttered, turning toward the door. "Leaving so soon?" "Don't be a Grinch," Jason called after me, smirking. I didn't respond. I opened the door, letting the cold winter air hit me, shivering not from the cold but from the betrayal. I couldn't believe they all sided with him, or at least didn't care. My heart hammered, anger and hurt mixing in a bitter cocktail I'd never felt before. I walked down the snow-covered street, footsteps crunching beneath me. I imagined running, screaming, anything to shake this humiliation. But all I could do was think of Jason laughing, my stepmother smirking, and my father ignoring everything. "Why?" I whispered to myself, voice barely audible over the wind. Why did this have to happen on Christmas? I stopped by the frozen pond at the park, watching the ice glint under the weak winter sun. I felt small, abandoned, and enraged all at once. The betrayal was like a knife twisting in my chest. And I realized right then that nothing would ever be the same. Not this Christmas. Not ever. I wiped my tears, jaw set. I would figure a way. I didn't know how yet, but I promised myself, Jason wouldn't get away with this forever. The cold didn't bother me anymore. It was nothing compared to the fire burning inside. I walked the empty streets, the cold biting through my thin jacket. Every step felt heavier than the last. Jason's laughter echoed in my mind, that cruel, triumphant sound that wouldn't leave me alone. I kicked a stone, watching it skid across the pavement, useless anger thrumming in my chest. "What's the matter, kid?" a voice asked, pulling me from my thoughts. I looked up to see a woman behind a cafe counter, wiping her hands on a towel. Nothing," I muttered, but my stomach rumbled, betraying me. "You look like you could use some food," she said gently. "Come in. Warm up." I hesitated. My pride wanted me to keep moving, but hunger and exhaustion won. I stepped inside. The smell of fresh bread and coffee hit me like a bomb. "Sit wherever you like," she said, gesturing to a corner table. "I'll bring something." "Thanks," I muttered, lowering my gaze. "I'm Sophie," she introduced herself, smiling warmly. "And you are?" I shrugged. "I'm just someone passing through. Someone who looks like they've had a rough day." She chuckled softly. "Rough life, maybe?" I didn't answer. How could I? My mind flashed back to my mother, her laugh in the kitchen, her gentle hands fixing breakfast. Those memories made the ache in my chest sharper. Jason, my stepmother, even my father, they didn't care. I had nowhere to turn. Sophie set a plate of warm bread and eggs in front of me. You can't think straight on an empty stomach. Thanks, I said, picking up the fork. The food was simple but tasted like hope. You look like someone who dreams big, Sophie said quietly, sliding into the seat across from me. Am I right? I paused, surprised. I wanted to start my own business. I had plans. I had everything set up before Jason ruined it. My voice broke and I pushed the plate away, not finishing a bite. He'll regret it, she said calmly. People who tear others down always do. I don't even know how to start over, I admitted. Everything's gone. Sophie reached across the table, placing a hand over mine. Then start small. One step at a time. You'll get there, trust me. Her confidence seeped into me like sunlight through a cracked window. I wanted to believe her, even if a tiny voice in my head whispered that I didn't deserve it. Do you have somewhere to stay? She asked. No, I muttered. I was thinking of just wandering tonight. Not tonight, she said firmly. You can stay here. I have a small room in the back. Warm, safe. No questions asked. Her offer caught me off guard. Why would you do that for me? Sophie shrugged. Because sometimes people need a little help. And because you seem like you've got fire in you. Don't waste it on misery. I didn't answer immediately. My heart wanted to argue, to say I wasn't worth it, but I felt tears rise again. Okay, thank you, I whispered. Good. Now eat. As I ate, I thought about my mother again. How proud she'd have been if she'd seen me now, trying to survive, refusing to break entirely. The memory made the ache in my chest sharper but also gave me a strange determination. Jason's face flickered in my mind, smug, triumphant, thinking he'd won. He hadn't seen this side of me yet. He wouldn't know what was coming. You're quiet, Sophie observed, breaking my thoughts. Just thinking, I said. About everything. About losing everything. Then think about what you can win, she said softly. Not about what's gone. About what's next. Her words stirred something inside me. I didn't feel whole yet, not even close, but for the first time in hours, maybe days, I felt a small spark of hope. And I knew deep down that spark would grow into a fire. I woke before sunrise, the smell of Sophie's coffee pulling me from sleep. Morning, she said, handing me a steaming cup. Thanks, I muttered, rubbing my eyes. What's the first job today? You're learning, not just working, she corrected. You'll start with deliveries. Observe, note details, think ahead. Deliveries? I frowned. How's that going to help me get back at Jason? Sophie smiled patiently. It's not about him yet. It's about learning patience, planning, seeing patterns. You rush, you fail. You wait, you win. I sighed, sipping the coffee, tasting determination more than caffeine. All right, I'll try. The streets were quiet, the city still waking up. I carried packages to shops, noting every transaction, every face, every interaction. Sophie had a way of making me see the bigger picture. You're thinking too much like a kid, she said later, observing me jotting notes in a small notebook. You need to think like someone who controls the game, not reacts to it. I used to react, I admitted. And look where it got me. Jason laughing, everyone against me. And now, she asked. Now, I need a plan, I said, jaw tight. Step by step. Over the next few weeks, I balanced odd jobs, learning customer relations, numbers, and strategy. Each interaction taught me something new. At the cafe, I learned negotiation from Sophie. On the streets, observation sharpened my instincts. My mind replayed Jason's smirk every morning. He had no idea I was changing, growing stronger, smarter. One afternoon, while delivering packages near the park, I overheard a group of young men laughing. One of them mentioned Jason's latest business deal, bragging about his easy wins and luck with investors. I gritted my teeth. Easy wins? Luck. I muttered. He thinks he's untouchable. A voice beside me said, You talking to yourself again? I jumped. Yeah. Habit. Don't forget, Sophie said when I returned that evening. Information is power. Notice patterns, people, weaknesses. Jason isn't untouchable, he's careless. That's your edge. I nodded, feeling the fire in my chest reignite. Careless. That's right. I'll use that. Days turned into weeks. I learned to read people, calculate risks, and keep my emotions in check. When a rude customer yelled at me, I didn't snap. I smiled, offered solutions, and observed reactions. I realized Jason's arrogance thrived on impulse. I wouldn't make that mistake. One night, as I cleaned the cafe, Sophie said softly, You're different now. You've got focus, control. Don't lose it. I won't, I promised. I've been reckless before. That ends now. Sophie studied me, her eyes sharp. Revenge isn't about rage. It's about timing, precision. You'll get your chance. But only if you're ready. I'll be ready, I said, my voice firmer than I expected. He won't know what hit him. Meanwhile, Jason continued his arrogance elsewhere. Sophie had shown me ways to track news, social media, and gossip. I read about his parties, his brags about wealth, his careless decisions. Friends of his unknowingly revealed weaknesses, and each piece of information was another tool for me. You're obsessed, Sophie teased one evening as I laid out notes across a table. I'm focused, I corrected, tracing the connections between his actions, his friends, his mistakes. This isn't about obsession. It's strategy. And strategy beats impulse, she said. Remember that when the time comes. I nodded, imagining the day I'd confront Jason, not with anger but with control. The kid who left that Christmas humiliated would never be the same. This version of me was sharper, calmer, and calculating. I was learning, building, and waiting. Soon, I whispered to myself that night, staring out the cafe window as snow fell lightly. Soon, Jason. You'll see the difference. I went to sleep with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. The plan had begun, and with Sophie guiding me, I was no longer the boy he thought he could destroy. The morning sun hit the city skyline as I unlocked the door to my small office, the scent of fresh paint and new beginnings filling the air. Ready for another day? Sophie asked, walking in behind me, her hands tucked in her coat pockets. Always, I replied, straightening my tie. It's crazy. I never thought I'd get here. Sophie smiled knowingly. You earned it. Years of work, observation, patience. You're not the same boy Jason humiliated. I laughed softly. That feels good to hear. Feels like I've been waiting my whole life for this moment. You've been waiting to grow, not just to get back at him, she said. Remember that. Your strength comes from who you've become, not who hurt you. I nodded, staring out the window at the bustling streets below. I know, but I can't lie. Seeing him again, I'll admit, part of me wants him to see this version of me. Sophie raised an eyebrow. Careful. Wanting him to notice can tip you off balance. Patience is your power. I took a deep breath, letting her words settle. My first client of the day arrived. Michael, a well-dressed man with an easy smile and sharp eyes. Good morning, he said, shaking my hand firmly. I hear great things about your company. Thanks, I said, keeping my smile professional. I'm glad you stopped by. I think we can do some exciting things together. Michael chuckled. I hope so. I've invested in plenty of small companies, but something about yours feels promising. Sophie whispered as she passed me a folder. Watch him carefully. People like him notice potential, and we can use that later. I nodded, following her advice. Inside, Michael's casual confidence reminded me of Jason's arrogance, but with substance behind it. I made mental notes, carefully observing his tendencies, the way he tested boundaries where he hesitated. Later that afternoon, I stepped outside for a quick coffee break. My eyes caught a familiar figure across the street. Jason. Of course. Still strutting, still laughing, still thinking the world was his playground. I clenched my jaw. Look at him, I muttered. He hasn't changed a bit. Still thinks life's a game. Sophie joined me, wrapping her scarf tighter. And yet here you are. You're the one who's changed, who's building something solid. I can't help it, I said quietly. Part of me wants to walk over there, make him notice me. Sophie shook her head. No. Walk your own path. Let your success speak before you do. That's more powerful than confrontation. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. You're right. I can feel it. I'm stronger now. Smarter. Calm. We watched as Jason waved at someone, laughing loudly. His friends seemed impressed by him, but I noticed cracks in his confidence. A misstep here, a forced laugh there. That was my edge. Later, back inside, I debriefed with Sophie. He's arrogant, careless, predictable. I can see every move before he makes it. Good, she said. That's what strategy looks like. Now think about the next steps. Patience, observation, and timing. That's how you rise from ashes, not just survive them. I smiled, feeling the transformation in me solidify. I get it. Control my emotions, build my empire, and wait for the right moment. Jason won't know what hit him. Sophie's laugh was soft but approving. Exactly. And don't underestimate Michael. He'll be key in your next phase. But first, focus on your foundation. Build it strong and everything else will fall into place. As the evening light faded, I walked home alone, thinking about the journey. The years of struggle, the cold streets, the humiliation, they'd all forged me. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving. And Jason, I whispered to myself, you'll see soon enough. You thought you won, but you had no idea what was coming. The fire inside me burned hotter than ever, tempered by control and focus. This wasn't just revenge yet. This was the rise, the preparation, the rebirth. And when the time came, every misstep Jason made, every arrogant word he spoke, would work against him. For the first time in years, I smiled with calm satisfaction. I was no longer the boy he thought he could destroy. I was something stronger, sharper, and ready. I walked into the grand hall of the hotel, the chandeliers reflecting off polished floors. The hum of voices and clinking glasses felt different this time, not intimidating but like a stage I owned. Sophie's words from years ago echoed in my mind: patience, observation, and timing. Welcome back, she whispered, standing beside me. Remember, subtle. You're not here to fight yet. I nodded, adjusting my cufflinks. I've got this. It's been years, Sophie. I'm not the same kid. From across the room I spotted him, Jason. His posture still cocky, smile smug, hand wrapped around a champagne flute. He didn't notice me at first. He never noticed the quiet ones until it was too late. I felt a surge of controlled satisfaction. Look at him, I muttered, still thinking he's untouchable. Sophie followed my gaze. He's predictable. That's your advantage. I walked closer, mingling with other guests, letting my presence register without overtly confronting him. A waiter handed me a glass of water and I smiled politely. Jason glanced my way, caught my reflection in a mirror, and his smirk faltered. What's he thinking? Sophie murmured. Confused, I said quietly. He recognizes something different. Not sure what yet. I overheard a conversation nearby. Did you see Jason's last deal? I heard it almost collapsed, a man said, glancing toward Jason. Jason laughed nervously, forcing confidence. No worries, all under control. I stepped into earshot, voice calm, conversational. Funny, I was just reading the same report. Surprised you managed to make it look that smooth. Jason stiffened. Yes, well, his words trailed. I smiled lightly. You know, people notice details. The ones who care about their reputation, that is. He glanced around, suddenly aware that his friends were watching. A flicker of doubt crossed his face, a crack in his armor. I had never seen him like this. You've grown, he said finally, with an attempt at casualness. I don't know if you remember me. I remember everything, I replied evenly. Especially the things you did to make sure I'd never forget. His eyes narrowed. I don't. Jason, you always were careless, I interrupted smoothly, not raising my voice. People talk. And sometimes, it's the little truths that matter most. He hesitated and I could see the panic building. His friends avoided my gaze, whispering among themselves. Then a voice behind him said, Jason, this is Jessica. A woman in a red dress approached him, hand extended. I've heard a lot about you. Jason's relief was palpable as he shook her hand, but I caught her eyes on me briefly. Curious, questioning, unsure. She didn't know yet, but she would play a part in what came next. I said nothing, just smiled politely, letting the social tension settle. Nice to meet you, I murmured to her, letting the small seed of doubt plant itself. Sophie nudged me. Keep them unsettled, not alarmed. Subtlety is key. I nodded. I can do that. Jason stumbled through a conversation with an investor nearby. I approached casually, holding a folder. I reviewed some of your numbers, I said. Interesting strategies. Some of your assumptions, risky. His laugh was brittle. Thanks. I think. Risky can be exciting, I said, letting my tone imply both admiration and critique. But some people notice failures faster than successes. Jason swallowed, looking uneasy now. He kept trying to smile, but his composure was slipping. For the first time in years, he seemed human, vulnerable. I glanced at my father, sitting at a corner table, observing quietly. His gaze lingered on me longer than I expected. Recognition. Regret. I didn't speak, just allowed him to see the man I had become. Jason finally excused himself, muttering something about a phone call. I watched him leave, shoulders tense. My satisfaction was quiet, controlled. The seed of doubt had been planted. Sophie placed a hand on my shoulder. See? Patience and subtlety. You don't need to yell to shake him. You've changed the game. I smiled, letting the fire of determination mix with calm satisfaction. This is just the beginning. He won't know what's coming next. The night continued, conversations flowing around me, but I barely noticed. All I saw was the opportunity, the advantage I now held. Jason's arrogance had finally met someone who wasn't afraid, who wasn't powerless. And I had all the time I needed. The boardroom smelled of polished wood and ambition. I sat at the head of the table, Michael beside me, Sophie quietly observing. Jason entered, his usual smirk plastered on, unaware that he was walking into a trap of his own making. "Jason," I said pleasantly, "glad you could join us." He raised an eyebrow. "I heard you've been doing well. Congratulations, I guess." "Thanks," I replied smoothly, letting my words drip with calm satisfaction. "It's been a lot of work, but worth it. I'm sure you can relate to hard work, right?" Jason's smile faltered for the briefest second before he recovered. "Of course. Hard work pays off. I noticed your last deal had some discrepancies," I said, opening my folder. "Nothing serious, but investors are always wary of assumptions. Don't you agree?" Jason shifted uneasily. Everyone makes mistakes. I fix them." "I'm sure you do," I said, letting the implication linger. "But perception matters as much as reality, don't you think? People notice the cracks more than the polish." Sophie leaned in slightly, whispering, "Watch him unravel." Jason laughed nervously, but I could see it. His eyes darting, the tiny tremor in his fingers. "You're very confident about your assessments," he said, trying to regain control. "I've learned to observe," I replied calmly. "Some of us grow stronger after hardship. Others remain the same." He glanced at Michael, hoping for backup, but Michael's expression was neutral, almost calculating. "Is there a problem here?" Michael asked casually. "No, just a discussion," Jason stammered. "Discussion about accountability," I said, voice steady. "And transparency. Both qualities you mentioned you valued in business. Correct?" Jason's smirk was gone. "Well, yes, but..." "Yet your latest investors are concerned," I continued, flipping a page in my folder, "and some of your colleagues are reconsidering partnerships. Small cracks become large when ignored." His jaw tightened. "This is exaggerated. Perception is reality in business," I said softly. "And sometimes reality bites, especially when pride blinds you." Jessica appeared at the door, hesitant. "Jason, is everything all right?" Yes," he said quickly, avoiding her eyes. But she saw it. I saw her glance at me, curiosity, confusion, a hint of admiration. She noticed his flaw before he even did. "I wouldn't worry too much, Jessica," I said lightly, smiling at her. "Some things have a way of sorting themselves out." Jason's face went pale, subtle panic creeping in. His friends, who had gathered outside the room, exchanged uneasy glances. Betrayal had a funny way of revealing itself, and he couldn't hide. Sophie's voice broke through my thoughts. "This is where patience pays off. Notice, control, and wait for the moment to strike fully. Emotion clouds judgment. He's showing it now." I nodded internally. My internal battle raged quietly. Revenge was sweet, but the choice between total humiliation and silent superiority weighed on me. I had to balance satisfaction with morality. "You've built quite a reputation," Jason finally said, voice strained. I underestimated you." "I hope so," I replied calmly. "Underestimation has consequences. Sometimes it teaches lessons painfully." "Are you trying to ruin me?" he asked, desperation in his tone. "I'm reminding people of reality," I said, "and showing that arrogance without awareness has its price." Jessica bit her lip, unsure of what to say. She looked from Jason to me, the tension thick in the room. I knew her impression of him was shifting. Small cracks had begun to form. "My father," I murmured, almost to myself, glancing toward him in the corner. His face was pale, regret written across every line. Years of neglect had left a mark, and now he saw the result. Me standing strong, calculated, in control. Jason's friends began murmuring, and I caught a few whispering about lost deals, about weaknesses previously ignored. His empire wasn't crumbling yet, but the foundation trembled. I don't understand," Jason whispered. "How did you?" "Years of learning, observation, and restraint," I said, voice soft but deliberate. "Some of us grow after being broken. Some stay small, letting pride rule." Sophie's hand rested lightly on my shoulder. "Remember, control is the greatest satisfaction. Revenge is hollow if it leaves you empty. You decide your own path." I smiled faintly, letting my gaze sweep the room. Jason's panic was real, his confidence gone. And I felt it, the quiet thrill of karma taking its first step. "You'll see soon enough," I said under my breath, not to anyone in particular. "All the pieces are falling into place. And you will regret what you ignored." The room hummed with tension, the air thick with unspoken truths. Jason's downfall had begun, subtle but irreversible. Jason's office smelled faintly of expensive cologne and panic. I stepped in calmly, letting the tension fill the space before I spoke. "Jason," I said softly, "we need to talk." He looked up, eyes wide, jaw tight. I don't know what you want now." "I'm not here to take anything you haven't already given me," I said, voice steady. "But I am here to make sure you understand the consequences of your choices." He laughed nervously. "Consequences? Come on, it's business, not a personal vendetta." I leaned against the desk, casual but unyielding. "Business is personal when arrogance blinds judgment. Your investors know it, your friends know it. Even Jessica is starting to see it." Jessica's name hit him like a punch. He swallowed hard. She doesn't. Doesn't what? I interrupted gently. "Notice your flaws? Jason, it's hard to hide a foundation that's crumbling." He looked around, eyes flicking to the empty chairs where some of his colleagues had already walked out, rumors of his failures spreading fast. Panic crept into his posture, subtle but undeniable. I don't understand," he muttered. "How did this happen?" I shrugged lightly. "You underestimated people, ignored warnings, and let pride guide you. That's all it takes. Sometimes life handles the rest." He ran a hand through his hair. I thought I was untouchable." "You weren't," I said calmly. "You made the mistake of assuming power equals respect. It doesn't. Discipline and awareness do." His shoulders slumped, and for the first time he looked small, vulnerable. I felt no joy in seeing him like this, only satisfaction, the quiet proof that patience and persistence mattered more than rage. "Why are you doing this?" he asked quietly. "You don't need to." "I'm not doing anything I don't deserve," I said. "I'm simply letting reality catch up to you. You made the choices, Jason. I just happened to survive them and learn from them." Jessica stepped forward, looking torn. "Jason, I didn't realize, some of this is true. You can't just pretend it doesn't exist." His eyes flicked to her, guilt flashing across his face. "Jessica, it's not like that." "I think it is," she said softly. "And it's clear now who's really in control here." Jason's panic grew, tiny tremors in his hands. I can fix this. I can." "You can't fix arrogance," I said simply. "You can only survive humility. And right now that's your lesson." My father appeared in the doorway, expression heavy with regret. I should have seen this," he muttered. "I ignored so much, and now." I nodded, keeping my composure. "It's all right, Dad. You see it now. That counts for something." Jason's friends began calling, messages piling up. I could hear the faint buzz of betrayal as partnerships faltered and excuses ran thin. His empire wasn't gone, but the cracks were everywhere. I don't know what to do," he admitted finally, voice trembling. "Start by accepting it," I said. "Then maybe rebuild. If you can. If not, remember this moment. Pride without awareness always ends badly." He lowered his gaze, no words left to defend himself. The room felt heavy with consequence. Sophie, standing quietly behind me, gave a subtle nod. No words were needed. I had learned control, restraint, and strategy. This wasn't about cruelty, it was about justice. Karma finally arriving at his doorstep. I took a step back, letting him absorb it. "I hope you learn from this, Jason. Because the rest of us have. And some of us rise stronger." He didn't reply. I left the office, calm and measured, feeling the weight of satisfaction settle in. Not vindictive, not malicious, just right. Justice, quiet and unrelenting. Outside, the cold air hit me and I smiled faintly. This was the closure I had been waiting for, the balance restored. Jason had learned his lesson. And I had claimed my peace. I stood outside the old family home, the winter sunlight reflecting off the frosted windows. Memories rushed back, the laughter, the warmth, and the betrayal that had once cut deeper than any blade. I took a deep breath, letting it out slowly. "Sophie," I said, turning as she approached, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "I never thought I'd feel this calm." She smiled, handing me a cup. "You've come a long way. Calm doesn't mean weak, it means you've learned control." I nodded, taking a sip. "It's strange. I expected revenge to feel satisfying, but it's peaceful. I didn't destroy Jason completely. I let karma do the work while I grew stronger." Michael, standing nearby, laughed softly. "That's real power, not just money or influence. You've transformed yourself, and that's worth more than any business deal." "Exactly," I said, watching the snow fall lightly over the yard. I have everything I could have wanted before, but now I also have something I didn't know I needed: control, patience, understanding. Sophie leaned against the railing. And empathy. That's what separates a truly strong person from someone who's just angry. I smiled faintly, thinking of Jason. He was left to face his failures, his arrogance exposed. He'd learned painfully that life isn't about appearances or luck. It's about awareness and respect. You could have humiliated him further, Michael said. Why didn't you? I shook my head. Because that would have made me the same as him. Satisfaction is temporary when cruelty is involved. True victory is not letting the past control me. Sophie nodded approvingly. You've become your own person, not the boy everyone tried to hurt. That's freedom. I let my gaze wander to the house, thinking of my mother. She would have been proud of how far I'd come, how I'd endured and grown. A smile tugged at my lips. I'm going to repurpose this place, I said. Not for me, not for Jason. For something good, something positive. Michael's eyes brightened. Like a community space? Exactly, I said. A cafe, a learning center. A place where people can feel safe, grow and thrive. The past doesn't disappear, but it can become a foundation instead of a prison. Sophie clapped softly. That's symbolic. Beautiful, really. I laughed quietly. I never thought I'd say this, but it feels like closure. Not just revenge, not just business. It's emotional closure. Michael raised his cup. To growth then. To transformation. I clinked my cup with his. To moving forward. Sophie smiled warmly. And to choosing strength over bitterness. We stood there for a moment, sipping coffee, letting the silence speak volumes. The air was crisp, the world bright, and for the first time in years, I felt entirely in control of my destiny. Do you ever regret it? Sophie asked quietly. Regret what? I said. Everything. The fight, the patience, the planning, the confrontation with Jason. I shook my head. Not at all. Every moment shaped me. Without it, I wouldn't have learned control, empathy, or strength. I wouldn't have grown into someone I respect. Michael nodded. And Jason, he's learning his lesson in his own way. I glanced back at the street, picturing him fumbling through his failures. A quiet satisfaction warmed me, but not bitterness. Compassion had found its way in even here. You've really changed, Sophie said softly, her eyes scanning my face. And you'll keep changing as long as you remember this lesson. I will, I said. The past is a teacher, not a cage. I've walked through fire, and now I can choose the path ahead. I turned back to the house. The snow glittered on the roof, the windows reflecting possibilities instead of pain. For the first time, I felt the weight of the past lift. This is just the beginning, I whispered, mostly to myself. The beginning of something real, something mine. Sophie and Michael exchanged a look, smiles faint but knowing. I didn't need words. We all understood. Growth, control, and peace, those were victories no one could take away. I took one last look at the house, now a symbol of renewal, and stepped forward, letting the cold winter air fill my lungs. For the first time, I wasn't running from my past. I was walking forward.